This episode of the podcast, my friend Chelsey from Washington joins me. She is an attorney and she is a great human being. I learned a lot from this conversation, from how she became an attorney and then what's life like being a female in a very male dominated work environment. Really cool conversation, and I learned a lot. And I hope you learned some cool stuff from this conversation. So here is my friend Chelsey Buchard.
Sure. So my name is Chelsey Buchard, and I'm currently a Washington Rule 9 limited license legal intern and awaiting my bar exam results so I can be a full-blown attorney.
Whoa. Yeah, now it's a long process, huh? From start to
Yeah.
finish in law school. What does the roadmap look like? Because I am completely ignorant with something like this.
Yeah, so was I before I decided that's the route I wanted to go. So you need a bachelor's degree to get into law school. For the school I went to, it didn't matter what your degree was in. So my degree was in psychology. And
Oh,
I
that
felt,
kind of fits.
yeah, it was super helpful, especially because I practice family law. So it's basically being a psychologist and an attorney all in one.
All right.
Um, a lot of people major in poli-sci, so they can, just go right into it, which is political science for people that may not know.
Yeah.
And then you have to take the Lsat, which is an exam to get into law school. And they base it on, it's like reading comprehension and logic skills.
Mm.
Um,
It's like a
which
general studies kind of thing.
Kind of, yeah, and it really has nothing to do with law school, so it's it's
Oh,
kind of
that's weird.
pointless. But you do need a score to get in, and after you do that, you apply, which is for me, it took a while because I was working and going to school at the same time. Um, but you apply to a law school or however many law schools you want to go to. And then you either get accepted or not.
So when you get accepted, how is that another 4 years you go to school for?
It's 3 years.
3. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And do you pick what avenue of law you want to go into from the jump?
You can, but you don't have to. So for my school, and this might be different for other schools, but for my school where I went in Oregon, it's just a general overall law. So it's a doctorate degree it's a Juris Doctorate degree. So a doctorate of jurisprudence.
That's cool. That sounds
Yeah.
fancy.
It's super fancy.
Yeah, I like it.
A doctor. You have to say it with an accent though.
Yeah.
Like, doctorate of jurisprudence, or else it
Oh, I
doesn't.
love that. Like old Victorian accent. That sounds baller. I like that. That's
Yeah,
so
but
funny.
it's stressful. Like
Yeah.
0 out of 10, don't recommend going to law school.
Now, what makes it so stressful? Is it the expectations or just the sheer amount of work that you're trying to do?
I think it's all of that. There is so much pressure. And I know even for my school, we weren't very competitive against each other, but there are schools out there like, the Yales and all of those higher tiered schools that they really pit students against each other because all of the exams are based on a bell curve. So you are quite literally competing against your classmates.
Oh, okay. So it's not just like a passing grade is 60. It's literally based on, wow. Why would they do it that way though?
Because they're terrible.
Oh,
Yeah, and so it's that aspect. And for me, I'm a competitive person, but I'm competitive in like sports, and I'm not competitive in like education. I want to learn as much as I can, and I want everyone to learn as much as they can. So that was really hard for me.
right.
And it's just the workload. I'm a single mom too, so I was trying to be a mom and study and do all of the things that I needed to do all at the same time, and I never got any of them done at the same time.
Yeah. And that's like that whole work-life balance must have been hard because it's not just, I mean, if there's like some days where I feel like I'm struggling, right, with real estate and then Ashton, and then there's other days that's manageable, but I'm not going to school on top of all of that. So I can't even imagine.
Totally. Yeah, it was really hard. And in that sense too, there's a lot of people, they're called K through JDs. So they're just going from kindergarten all the way to getting their
Mm,
JD.
yeah.
So they're younger. So that was really hard for me to try to, my friends that I made at school would ask me, how can I help you? Or why aren't you getting this? And I'm like, I just have so much going on. I felt like no one related. So
Right.
that was harder for me to deal with.
Did no one related in the sense that like nobody else had a kid in school, nobody else was also having to juggle a full-time job, because I would imagine law school is very difficult, like you're saying, and most of those people are in college to be in college and not usually working. I could be wrong. I'm sure there's cases where
So
it's
yeah, for law school, our law school, we could not work the first year. We
mm,
were forbidden from working the first year. So I quit
interesting.
my job. And thankfully, I'm very privileged to have my family that was helping me out during that time. But every year after that, I would intern, which was kind of working, but it was very limited amounts of working.
Yeah, when you intern, what is that? Are you managing cases and then the head attorney is just like overseeing them, or is it really like what everybody says when you're an intern, you're just a coffee getter, right?
I think it depends on the internship that you do. So
Mm.
my first internship was at our Superior Court house here. And so I was just basically doing research for a judge.
Oh,
So I didn't really do much. I mean, he was wonderful, so he didn't make me do those things like get coffee for him and
right,
run his
right.
errands. I actually got to learn quite a bit. And then my other internship landed me the job I have now, which was at a private practice. And that was way more responsibilities. I was drafting, I was researching, I would have client contact sometimes. I was mostly observing, but there are definitely internships where they just make you do all of the things they don't want to do.
Right, right.
So
Yeah,
it really,
and I think it probably depends too. It sounds like you got into a good group of people that weren't making you get be the coffee chaser and stuff.
yeah, yeah, I did. I'm very,
Did you have to do a certain amount of work hours, interning hours, a part of finishing law school?
it's not required, but I did it's called the externship program. So I got to work a specific amount of hours for school credit. But we could
Gotcha.
choose. So I think it was, oh God, I can't even remember now, but it was like 17 hours per week for a certain amount of credits. But you had to manage your own time logs and turn in all of these things. But
Hmm.
it's not required. You could go throughout law school and not intern anywhere. I don't recommend that either, though, because on the job training is very, very important.
Yeah, it seems like being hands-on for a lot of that because is law school very helpful in actually practicing law, or do you feel like it's kind of a weird hoop you have to jump through?
Uh, I feel like it's mostly a hoop
Yep.
um,
That's
because,
how real estate's the
yeah,
same way. Like real estate, when you take the course, you got to take it's like a 48 or 72-hour class, and teaches you nothing about actually selling a house. It's literally just like this is what riparian rights are, and this is this type of deed, and then there's a warranty deed, and then you
yeah,
have it like is zero information about how to actually sell. So
right.
is that kind of the case in law school?
Yes, I would say
Yeah.
so because for me, I knew I wanted to go into family law. So, but not a lot of people do. But we have these required courses we have to take, like real estate transactions, for example,
Mm,
that I don't care about at all.
right.
I don't
Right.
care about that. I don't want to learn about it. It was
Yeah.
boring for me. I didn't get it, right?
Yeah.
But I had to learn it. and I'll never retain that information ever again.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird that sometimes the education into certain jobs and careers are not even grounded in how the job really works at some
Yeah,
points, you know?
exactly. And I think one of the only things that really helps everyone is there's 2 classes, at least minimum, for legal writing and research,
Mm,
because it's totally different from undergrad writing, like APA format style, completely different. And I had a really hard time transitioning from that style of writing, from writing psychology issues in
mhm.
essays to legal writing. It's a whole different thing. So
Yeah,
that
that
was helpful.
when I read, like, legal writing, I'm very confused by it.
Yes.
Here into thereafter.
And
I'd say do it too.
everything needs a citation afterwards, which in
Mm,
APA, they're like, try not to cite as much as you can, maybe cite every 5 sentences or whatever it is.
right.
In legal writing, you can cite after every single sentence that you write.
Jeez.
Because you have to
Jeez.
prove it came somewhere and that you're not just making it up.
Yeah, right, right, that's true, and literally every sentence too.
Every sentence.
Right, right, wow.
Yeah.
Like, I guess what I should ask, what made you get into family law? Because there's so many different types of law, like, you mentioned real estate, family, divorce, estate, like, there's so many different kinds. Why family?
Yeah. So I'm divorced and I went through my divorce with a child. So going through that experience, I interviewed a bunch of local attorneys and I didn't like them. I think you can tell when you're meeting someone, especially in sales or real estate or wherever a person or a professional makes money off of you, that you can tell if they're genuine or not.
Mm,
And so my experience wasn't the best locally, and I felt like a lot of the divorce attorneys around here weren't listening to me, and I was young. I was, like, 24 or 25 when that happened, and so nobody took me seriously, and it was very frustrating. And
yeah,
I had a good job, and I could pay retainers, so I just felt like I was overlooked until I met my attorney that I hired, who's still my attorney to this day. Um, she took the time, and I think it was because she related to me and had a child that had some hers had disabilities, but mine at that time had, some learning, disabilities at that moment. So I was like, "Man, why did that take so long for me
right,
to find someone who actually gave a shit about me,
yeah,
and my case?" And so at that time, I was also kind of stagnant at my job, and I loved it and I made great money, but I felt like I was losing brain cells working there because it was very robotic.
yeah. What'd you do
So,
before?
I did sales for a fitness
Mm,
company, so
yeah,
it was very, like, sales process and,
yeah,
I just and I couldn't really move up in the company, which I wanted to do. So that's when I decided that's what I was gonna do, is go to law school, and if I had a complaint about my local legal community, then I'm gonna change it.
right. That's cool, that's a good way to think of it. Do
Yeah.
you now when you're in the roles are reversed and now when people come to talk to you I don't know, is that how it works right now? If you're not technically an attorney, but passing the bar exam, can you take new clients?
Yes, so under my Rule 9 internship, I have a limited license to practice, so I am
Okay.
taking clients right now under supervision of my boss.
Okay, so, like, when they go to your office to interview you, are you, like, more hyper conscious about that when you go into that first initial meeting?
Yeah, definitely, and I mean, I think my personal opinion, and this might be my psychology background, but I think that, you know, the divorce and child custody world is so emotional anyway
Yeah,
to begin with. And if you're treated like, okay, I don't care what you say, this is how the court is going to see it, which ultimately that is what it is. But as attorneys, I feel like it's imperative to show emotion, or at least that you're listening and that you're understanding where your client's coming from, even
mm,
if they are so off the wall, anxious and they're spinning out of
yeah,
control. Like, it's your job to listen to them and empathize with them.
Right,
Get
right,
them
and
to
that's probably one of the biggest things that do you think that's one of the biggest things you focused on getting in the career was like, listen, I've been in that position where I felt like I wasn't heard, and now I want to make that my big priority for people.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so, and I think that also comes from, sales and customer service background is I don't really know how to turn that off anymore.
Right.
But that's how you retain clients too. I mean, I'm sure
Yeah.
working in real estate, you have to listen to what your clients want.
Right. And like you get like with attorneys, you'll get interviewed sometimes. Potential seller will have you over to do your whole like thinking about selling my mom's house. She passed away. I want to know what it's worth. But you come over for an interview, and it's not just you. Right after you leave, you got another agent coming in after you, and then there's another appointment later tonight. So they're trying to compare agents. I've gotten lucky where that hasn't happened to me too many times, just maybe like once or twice.
Mhm.
But I think the best way to overcome that is with me, I don't have a plan. Like I don't like I have my PowerPoint, right? This is what I think this is what the house compares to, yada yada yada.
Mhm.
But I feel like some people have like a script and they make it so rigid and they make it so like in the box where I feel like I get a lot better reception if I'm just like, so tell me about your mom.
Yeah.
What made your mom why is this house kept her here for 30 years? What
Yeah.
about tell me about the memories you had in the living room. What's like one good thing? Like try to be more real with them about other than like, hey, I can sell your house for XYZ. Everybody can sell a house in this
Yeah.
market, right? So be a little bit more genuine when you talk to them, right? It just
Totally.
seems like I think that's what people want more than ever.
And it's not only, being genuine, but it's also building that rapport because you are building relationships because
Right.
you want them to come back to you and you want them to be happy with their result, right?
Right.
So it's not just trying to necessarily sell them,
Right.
but it's building that rapport to make them feel comfortable and to keep that relationship going. Like I
Right.
don't
And make it set off on the right foot right off the gate.
exactly,
Right.
exactly. Like
And
I
how do
don't
you like
care.
find new clients? Like, is it through word of mouth? Like, if one person uses you, they had a great experience with you. Is it mostly, hey, you got to go talk to Chelsey because she was amazing through our divorce?
Yeah, I think, I grew up here, so I think a lot of a lot of my friends have been waiting to refer people to me, so that's really nice. But it's right now it's just word of mouth. We don't have really an ability to network because of the pandemic. But one thing I really like about our firm is that we hold well now it's weekly free clinics, legal clinics, and they're all virtual. So I've gained quite a few clients from just helping them out with quick legal advice, and they decide to retain me after that. So those
Oh,
are really the only two ways right now.
interesting. So it's like an open panel where they can come and just ask you a quick question.
They sign up like with the week before, and
Hmm.
then we put them in little like 30-minute slots and meet with them
Oh,
really quickly. Yeah.
shit. That's cool.
Yeah, it's really
That's a
cool.
that's a great way. I'm like already trying to turn my gears and thinking how you would do that for real estate, you
Real
know?
estate. Yeah.
Right. That's cool. That's really impressive. Do you think that's really the only way that you guys like kind of market to clients? Do you guys have like any of those radio ads or TV ads or anything?
No, we don't advertise really. I mean, just like the real estate industry, the family law industry right now is booming,
Yeah,
unfortunately. I mean,
that's
fortunately,
sad.
unfortunately, because everybody has been home with their spouses and figure out, hey, I don't actually really like you, or
I'm spending way too much time with you.
yeah, or we've had a significant increase in domestic violence, which is really unfortunate. And we have been helping people out of those situations too. So yeah, I mean, there's so much going on right now that we don't even need to advertise or network or really try to do anything because there's so much business right now.
Right. Yeah, it always If anybody's listening, that's an injury attorney. I'm sorry, but it always seems to be like those ones that have the weird commercials. Like in New York, we got
Really?
a couple of them that's like Alexander and Catalano hurt in a car. Call William Attar 444-4444. Like we have all
I
those
feel
like
like you've heard that quite a few times.
so many times,
Yeah.
and not a nat. I'm not like knocking on their practice, but
No.
it's funny. It's usually the injury lawyers that have like I don't see like a quirky, catchy divorce attorney phone number jingle. You know what I
No.
mean? It's like hurt in a car, call William Attar. You know what I mean? It's like those kind of
Or
slogans.
DUI attorneys, they usually have those too. Yeah.
What's that?
DUI attorneys.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
they usually have those.
Yeah.
No, we don't do that.
Do you think there is, you said with divorce rates like rising with COVID, do you think there's a common thread in all of these kind of issues? Is it like communication? Is it not enough space? Is it everybody being together all of the time more? Maybe everything?
I think it's a bit of everything.
Yeah.
I think there's been, at least in cases that I've seen recently over the last year, there's been a lot of um, deceitfulness.
Mhm.
People are, which I mean, there always is, but people are hiding things, and it's easier to find out about them because you're at home with them. And I think, especially for the older generation, the generation above ours, there's a lot of, they weren't spending lots of time together because one person was working or both people were working, and now all of a sudden they're in close quarters together and they realize we actually don't have much in common, or this political environment has them completely
Yeah.
divided, and they realize that they're not on the same page about a lot of big issues. We've seen a lot of that too. So, and
Yeah.
COVID has brought out super dividing issues between couples.
Yeah, I feel like everything's amped up. It's like you just
Yeah,
put everything like in a pressure cooker lately. That's what
totally.
it feels like.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how many times we have litigated getting people vaccinated. It's been,
Mm,
and we have. I mean, we've gone to court and said, either mom or dad is saying that the other party needs to be vaccinated before they see the kids because the kids can't be vaccinated, or,
right.
you know. So yeah, there's so much going on right now.
Wow, that's crazy. What
Mhm.
do you think? Do you spend a lot of time in the courthouse, or is it more in the office? Because I think a lot of people, including myself, have a misconception when you're in law that you spend 80% of your time in a courtroom and it's just like the TV.
No.
That's what I pictured.
Well, I mean, pre-COVID, all of our hearings are virtual anyway, so we never go to the courthouse now.
Mm,
But even before then, hearings don't typically last that long. Most of our work, at least for family attorneys, is done in office.
gotcha.
Yeah.
So not really so much of court cases bantering back and forth.
No, and especially how our process works here in Washington is I mean, 95% of our cases settle before they even go to a trial. So,
Interesting.
yeah.
95% settled.
Well, not only because they're out months and months, but they're very unpredictable. You don't know what the judge is going to rule, because
Right.
it's not in front of a jury. The
That's what I was gonna say. It's not in front of a jury of people who are gonna vote for the decision.
Yeah,
The judge makes the decision.
exactly.
Is there
And
a difference in naming of those two style of courts?
I mean, it's just non-jury trial and jury trial. I think
Oh,
there's a
okay.
bench trial, which is the judge, or a jury trial.
Oh, okay.
I might be wrong if somebody is more experienced than me.
Oh, no, it's okay. I was just thinking because I was like, I wonder if there's a special word for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know. I now that you say that, I guess that makes more sense. 95% are out of the court because it almost seems like the courthouse seems to be like it's when I say play, but it makes it sound terrible when I say play because it's like legitimately someone's future, but it
Right.
really is like you have to plan.
It's
from A to
inevitable.
Z,
Yeah.
every potential outcome.
Yes.
Did you have a class when you were in school that was just like courtroom strategies 101 with Mr. Smith?
No, we didn't really. We had what's called civil procedure, which are just like the rules. But there
That's
is
it?
there
Nothing?
yeah, there's
Oh
another
my god. You just learn by doing, I guess.
yeah, well, that's how I learned, but there is another course called moot court, which is basically fake court, right? Mock
Oh, yeah.
trial. I didn't do that, although I wish I did, but it was always after school, so I didn't have time to do it.
Right.
But yeah, it's basically it's a mock trial where you have to prepare your arguments and the other side prepares and you prepare witnesses and
Oh my god.
yeah, but it's
Oh my
hours.
god, my palms are sweating. I would crack in one of those like I would just crumble in one of those things. That I got a thing for jury duty and I was waiting for my number to get called, just sweating. It's like the middle of winter. I'm sweating, sitting, waiting for them to pick my number. And I'm like, please don't call my name.
Yeah.
I don't want to go up there. I don't want to do it, please. Because I can't imagine. But like, there's a lot of attorneys, I'm sure, that spend maybe 50% of their times, depending, maybe if they're like a criminal lawyer, right? Like, I would imagine they probably spend more time in the courthouse than
Oh, yeah,
maybe.
criminal attorneys for sure. Civil litigators, definitely, like, for those who litigate, like, car injuries, like car accident injuries and things like
Mm,
that, or workers' comp. Um,
right.
but a lot of things are settled out of trial because trial is extremely expensive. And like I said, you never know what the outcome is going to be.
Right. You got to be pretty confident in your case to want to bring it to trial.
Or stubborn
Right.
and rich.
Right. Yeah. When you're trying to settle a divorce, is it mostly you and the other divorce attorney kind of like going back and forth, like kind of it's almost like a negotiation, I'm thinking,
Yeah,
right?
pretty much. Here, and I don't know how it is everywhere else, but in Washington, we can have hearings that we go in front of a commissioner, which is basically just a tiny step down from a judge. So they
Mm,
still make rulings on other issues. You just don't go in front of the judge until trial.
mm,
But basically, it's going back and forth with either the other party or the other attorney on the other side and kind of like hashing out the issues where the clients are not in agreement.
right. Right. And is there anything that you had to give up that was like really funny? Like someone had to give up like a parrot or a pet rock, like somebody really wanted a pet rock or something?
Not yet. I hope so though, because I'm just gonna be so excited. Like I want to be able to tell people that I practice bird law.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
I
I've
want to
been
have
known to
one of
practice
those
bird
so
law.
bad.
That's
Yeah.
right, that's right. Exactly. That and there's also, like there's almost a sense of pride that being able to negotiate something that someone cares so much about, right? Like, that's also what drew me to real estate was the fact that I'm like, I'm helping my buyers get a house, that their dream house, for the cheapest amount of money that I possibly can. It's a little bit
Yeah.
harder in this market, right? But still trying to do that. So it's like you were trying to negotiate. All right, how am I going to get Mrs. Smith's bird back to her? Well, you might have to give up a certain percentage of your savings account to your husband if you want to make it work.
Yeah.
But you will have the parrot.
But you'll get the parrot. Yeah, I'm very excited to have one of those one day. Like the Beanie Baby case.
Yeah.
Like, give me the Beanie Baby case. I want to do that so bad.
Do you have a favorite case? Like, is there one that's you're like you love to read about?
In general or in family law specifically?
In general, we'll say.
Um, oh, there's a lot actually, because I'm a nerd and I love reading about case law, but at least when it's interesting. But there was it's not family law, but there's a really, really, really old case about these three guys that were, and I can't remember the name off the top of my head. But they were out to sea and they ran out of food. And so one of the guys got really, really sick and he ended up falling into a coma. And so he was like unconscious on this boat. The other guys were hungry. And so they decided to eat him.
No.
They decided to eat him. And they were like, he's going to die anyway. Um, it's like the most humane decision we can make for everybody at this moment. Right.
Right.
And I can't remember. So it ended up that they ate him and then they were charged with, was it murder? It was like murder in, so they used the defense of like an emergency,
Mm,
basically. Like
right.
they needed to do it or else everybody was going to die.
Yeah.
Um, And I wanna say I don't really remember the outcome because it didn't matter to me, but, I just remember, like, the facts of the case, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is wild." But I think they ended up getting charged with murder, and, like, back in the 1800s, you were killed for,
Right.
murdering
Right.
people. But yeah, it was like this whole debate of, was it out of necessity that they had to eat this guy, and is that
Right.
excusable, or is it murder because they killed him and he was still alive, So
There's got to be so many situations like that in law too that are less black and white and more, and because like when you look at a case like that, black and white, don't eat a person, right? It's
right.
illegal to eat a
Yeah.
person no matter what. But when you are out to sea for 60 days, you haven't eaten anything, Bailey just died, and you don't know how much longer you're gonna be on the boat. I don't know. That was a really tough dilemma. And
Yeah.
I mean, how many cases to this day that I don't think everything is black and white and fits in a
No.
box so much.
No, especially, I mean, in law, it's you can argue everything.
Right.
That's our job, is to argue
Right.
everything and understand what the other side is gonna argue so we can get ahead of it. And so, yeah, it's like, what do you do in that situation? And what does
Man,
the most reasonable person do in that situation? Would you do the same thing? And it's yeah, it can go on and on and on and on.
right. And it's like not even is it always it's not as there's like two sides to every story, right? Like when I worked at Runnings, theft was pretty bad. People usually wanted to take the DeWalt power tools, right? Because you can
Mm,
take the power tools and then flip them and sell them on the Facebook marketplace. So a lot of times the guys would just grab it, they'd run out, we couldn't go after him, we couldn't do anything. And but sometimes we had one guy who gave up as we were about to block the door. And then he just was like breaking down, saying that he didn't have any money for his kids and
yeah,
or to eat. And then you like part of you is like, well, how much of this is just kind of some bullshit story? But the other side of you is like, I want to give a guy like $20 to go get Burger King or something
right,
for, like sometimes I think people have to do some shitty things to make ends meet. And that's
totally.
how do you decipher what's good and bad? Like you guys have such a hard job.
It is really hard, and, there's we always say that there's 3 sides to every story.
Oh yeah, right. Their
There's
side, your
their
side, and
side, yeah, your side, and then the truth,
yep, right.
because nobody is going to tell the whole truth,
Right.
or it's going to be skewed a little bit, and either because they think that's what happened or that's how they understood the way things happened, or they wanna make it fit to them just a little bit better. So, I guess, our job is to advocate for our clients and based on the facts that they give us. So that's where a lot of people think, a lot of people say, "Oh, lawyers are liars." But truly, we have to be advocates for our clients. So if our client is lying to us and we don't know that they're lying to us, we can only go based on what they
What they
tell us.
said. Right.
If we find out they're lying, we have rules of ethics that we have to follow. So we cannot submit any documentation or information to the court that we know is untruthful.
Hmm.
So, we have to look at our position. Okay, this is what my client is telling me. There's documentation from the other party. We have to compare them and say, all right, what's really going on here? And like me, I have a very open and transparent and straightforward conversation with my clients. Like, hey, they're saying that this happened. They're saying that you hit them, you know, on this day because of this argument. What happened? Like, you need to tell me the truth, because if that did happen, then we need to like figure out a way to get in front of it. Meaning that you either like own up to it, and then we tell the court all the things that you've been doing to improve yourself since then,
Hmm.
or we just gotta give this one to them, or whatever the outcome may be.
Right. Right. Oh man, you guys' job's so intricate. Do you, when someone comes to you, when they start talking to you and interviewing you and stuff, do you kind of have the same system or formula of approach to each person? Is it kind of like identify their problems? How do we overcome their needs? How do I fit into the puzzle? Like, is it the same kind of routine for them?
Yeah, I think it's pretty similar, obviously based on what's happening. If somebody is in immediate danger, then it's definitely approached differently than somebody who's like, hey, yeah, we're just going to get a divorce. We don't have any kids and we're actually still pretty amicable, but I just need your help making sure that our assets are divided correctly.
Uh,
Then it's like, okay, what do you want out of this? And how can we get there?
right. Right. And then kind of base your strategy and plan of attack around that.
Yeah, on that, and then also what the court is going to allow to happen, because ultimately that's what matters. And so if they're asking for, oh, I want to take him for everything he's got, we hear that a lot. I want everything he's got. Well, you're not going to get everything he's got. So like, we're going to
Right.
stop you right there. But this is what the court is probably going to do. So how can we fit what you want or what you think that you're entitled to in this divorce or in this child custody case into what the court will likely do?
Right. And it's when you approach it from that way rather than fire her up or kind of dismiss the way she's feeling, at the same time you're kind of like helping ground her in reality. Is like, listen, I hear you. I understand that guy's a dirtbag, but you can't take everything he has.
Yeah.
But
And it's especially easy here in Washington because we're a community property state. So like default, as soon as you marry someone, everything from there on forward is 50-50. So
ah,
I think a lot of people don't realize that. So that helps them. Oh, okay. Well, the law says, default 50-50. Of course, there's situations where, you can kind of balance it a little bit more. But like if somebody was a stay-at-home wife for 20 years and was a stay-at-home mom and hasn't worked or something,
right.
then there's room to kind of argue that they should get a little bit more. But yeah, it does definitely help bring people back down from like going full off the rails.
Right, right. And I would imagine too, it's probably hard not to get wrapped up in the emotions sometimes, especially having a kid and having the kids involved. I'm sure a lot of times you've been in situations where it was kind of like heart wrenching or gut wrenching.
Yeah, I think, I do have a hard time kind of separating myself from that, but we don't deal with like child abuse cases really. If there's abuse, then we figure that out, but we're not the enforcers of, like the criminal side of it.
Yeah, right.
So that helps a little bit. I think if I were involved in one of those type of situations, it would be a lot more difficult for me.
Yeah,
But knowing that it's your job to remain neutral and like the stability in the situation, that helps me not kind of get more emotionally involved.
yeah. It also you're also trying to keep like at an arm's length away from the. I say an arm's length away from the transaction. Sometimes it's hard because you make these connections with people,
Yeah.
and then you know little Tommy, and you're like, man, he's a good kid going probably through some rough shit right now.
Yeah,
You know.
for sure. But the best thing that we can do is recommend them, therapy for everyone, give them resources, and we can only do so much. So
Right.
if somebody's not going to do it, we can't force them to do it. I mean, we could ask the court to force them to do it, but
Right.
sometimes they don't.
Right.
But that's also why I won't represent my friends
Yeah.
or my
Probably better
family.
that way, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, there's, like, conflicts rules, but I also like, even if I know their kids or know of them pretty well, I won't do it because I can't separate myself from my friends like that.
Yeah. It'd be a lot harder to
Yeah.
be fair to all parties, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Because you want to gas up your friends. You want to do the right thing for them
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
That's the tough part.
Exactly.
And one thing too, when we first were talking about doing the podcast, one thing you wanted to talk about was women in law, and you felt like not enough women are in law. What specifics, like, what do you think leads to that? What kind of percentage, we'll make it two-parted, what kind of percentage of men versus women are in law? We'll start there. One.
I actually think it's pretty equal now.
Yeah.
My law school class was majority women, actually.
Nice.
So, I don't think it's the I don't think it's the issue of there's not enough women in law. I think there I think it's the patriarchy of that men are always looked at as more powerful in law than women are.
Mm,
So
interesting.
that's been a huge issue for our firm. My firm is mostly women. I think we have 3 men on staff right now that are amazing. We love them so much, and the rest are women. So,
Right.
and they're very powerful and strong and, like, confident women, and a lot of the good old boys club attorneys don't like that.
It's weird. It's weird.
Yeah. So, we're a lot of young women, most of us are in our 30s, and they just don't like losing to women in their 30s, I guess.
It's a weird thing. I
Yeah.
think I think that'll change a lot too when the older generation, I know it sounds like I'm kind of grouping people, but I think a lot of that lies with that old generation mentality. And I
Yeah.
hope I don't piss anybody off when I say that, but I think that's kind of the cult of most of the issues, because it's, I mean, what are you gonna do? You can't be upset that you lost a trial court to a bunch of juries. Like, nobody's got control of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, there have been times where, I was talking to an opposing counsel and he wasn't really even that old. He's in his 40s, I think. And I just am like, "Hey, next time this happens, we're going to have to file a motion to do this," right? And that's very standard language for us because we're talking back and forth and letting you know like this isn't okay, and if it happens again, we're going to move forward with court. And I was told that I was being threatening and, that I was
Hmm.
being aggressive. But, and I sat down and I talked with my boss about it because I'm like, wow, the last thing I need is a complaint against me when I'm trying to get my bar license, right?
Right.
And she's like, no, this happens all the time. Do you think that, he would have said the same thing to a man if
Mm,
they said that to him? And I was like, probably not, because I wasn't being aggressive. That I was saying,
right.
like, this is so we're on the same page. Like, if your client does this again, then my client's willing to go to court. And I mean, that's literally what we talk about every day.
Right. Right.
So it just like things are taken way too out of proportion, I think, if somebody like myself or other women at my firm lay boundaries or communicate directly with some of the other council members that I kind of have that more like conservative mindset, they don't like it, and they really, have an issue with talking to everybody the same way.
It seems so weird. It's just like, oh, duh, you should talk to everybody the same way you would talk to each human being. I,
Yeah.
I wonder, how do you think we would like fix something like that? What do you think the solution is, other than just obviously being nice to one another?
I have no idea.
I know, maybe like more education, maybe like
I
more.
don't even
Do you
think it's
guys have to
that.
do any like continuing education classes
Yeah,
when you get your license?
we do. Yeah, and a lot of our commissioners and now judges are women. And so it's just weird to me that sometimes you'll even see them in a hearing go off on the judge and talk like the same person. We were interpreting a statute, which is a law, and he was interpreting it incorrectly. And the judge or the commissioner came back and said, "Well, that's not the statute. That's not how the statute's read." And he was like, "I don't agree with your interpretation." And I was like, "Oh my God, what?"
Right,
And so I don't know. I think, does he need to be called out in that moment for it to register, or like will that perpetuate that kind
right.
of opinion? I have no
That
idea.
could have just poured gasoline on the fire.
Right. Because
I've
me, if
I've
I
been
were that
pretty
commissioner, I would have been like, "Counsel, do not talk to me like that." You know what I mean? Or
right,
whatever.
right.
But that
Do
was
not talk to me like that, Your
in
Honor.
my
May
court.
I?
Right. Right. Like, right? You could have gotten like a argument on in this hearing, but I have no idea. But it's wild. It happens all the time.
Yeah. I do you feel like you see a lot of cases like that happen in front of you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That that's gotta be so wild because listen, I'm
Yeah.
a white dude, surprise, and never am I put in uncomfortable positions like that. Other
Right.
than one time. One time I first got into real estate. There was an older couple that came in that was a walk-in. They were looking to buy a house. So I invited them into the office so we could chat about what they wanted. And I had Dunkin' Donuts in my hand. And I was drinking my coffee. It was like 9 o'clock in the morning. And he goes, "You drink Dunkin', huh?" And I said, "Yeah, I love stopping at Dunkin' on my way through." And he looked at me dead serious and was like, "I thought Dunkin' was for women." And I didn't even know how to respond. Like my jaw was on the floor. I'm like, ah.
How?
Oh, okay. And then just trying to like make banter. I'm like, well, where do you like to get coffee? Where does a man get coffee? I guess. He's like, well, I like Burger King because they make it fresh every day. I'm like, Burger King farts in the can. Like when they make you a coffee, you're not supposed to get like when you order a coffee at Burger King, the people are like, are you sure you want a coffee? You're sure you want
Yeah.
one? You sure? That's the only example. So I've been very
Yeah.
lucky, Chelsea, because I
Yes.
am a white dude that never gets put in those situations.
Well, obviously, you're like a very feminine white dude because you go to Dunkin'.
Probably. I probably was wearing skinny khakis that day. That probably also threw him for a loop. You
Yeah.
know, he's probably like hiding behind all the rage he had, anyways. But
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine having to see that all day and deal with it. And especially when, like, that was a pretty easy thing to deal with. You just laugh. I just kind of laughed and rolled it off my shoulders, right?
Yeah.
But different situations I could see being very serious and being a little bit more hard to roll off the shoulder.
Yeah, and I think, for me, I was just I didn't care that he said that to me. I don't care, right? Like,
Right.
uh, I'm very secure with myself, so that didn't make me feel any type of way. But
Right.
I was more anxious that how is he going to retaliate if I respond to him? And I like professionally, you can make a bar complaint about anyone and
Right.
they have to investigate it. And so I'm like, that's the last thing I need right now once I'm trying to
Right.
be barred in this state. So that was more my place. And I think that comes from, a lot of women, we have to think about how men are going to react or retaliate in these situations where you normally wouldn't think that you would have to think about those things going
Right.
forward. But yeah, I mean, otherwise we just kind of laugh it off. We had this older this older counsel call one of our paralegals caddy the other day because she was trying to schedule a phone call with him and one of the managing partners, and he wouldn't give her a straight answer. And she was like, "Hey, I just need to confirm, does this day work for you?" And then it was like blown out of proportion. And she was like, "I'm just trying to confirm with you. Can you do this day or not?" And he was like, "Wow, you don't need to be so catty."
I thought catty was like when you were like being gossipy.
Yeah, I don't know. It was
Yeah.
just
I
it
don't
didn't
know.
make any sense. And so, and she's so wonderful. We all just kind of like rallied behind her. And, the managing partner was like, don't ever talk to my paralegal like that again.
Right. That's
So
so hey man, we're gonna buy you coffee. Like we just wanted to talk. That's like, can you do coffee? Jeez, man, just relax.
how dare you? Like,
Right.
you're
How dare you
emasculating
be so
me.
kind and generous and offer me a cup of coffee?
Right. Yeah, it's stuff like that. It's just wild.
Have you ever thought about starting your own firm?
I think initially I did, yes. Now, no, not anywhere in the future. I really love the firm I'm with right now, and there's room to become a partner, which, I would have equal interest in the business.
Mhm.
Um, so that's my ultimate goal. I think I just love them so much, and I don't think I would ever find a group of people who I relate to on so many levels. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. That could change, but
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, it seems
owning
like
your own
there's a lot
practice is
more at
awesome.
risk
Yeah.
when it's your firm,
Yes.
A lot more at risk. That's like more when you get that big baller Chelsea money right there. That's when you're like, throw that Hail Mary, we're opening up our own our own law firm.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing about the way that this firm runs is that we only when you make it to that point, you only have shared overhead of, running the business that you
Mm,
split amongst the partners. And then everything else that you make above that is yours.
mm,
And
gotcha.
so really, it would kind of be dumb to leave that to do
Yeah.
your own thing unless you have a lower amount of shared overhead, which is going to be very hard to do.
Right. Right. That's like the other day, one of my buddies asked if I would ever start my own brokerage, my real estate. I'm like, but then I gotta pay rent on a house or on a building, and then I gotta hire an admin, and then I lose all these programs I have in place, and then I lose all this other cool stuff. I'm like, no, I'm okay with this. This setup's very okay with me right now.
Yes. Yeah.
You know?
Unless you start, like, selling the multi-million-dollar homes and, you know, going
Exactly.
being, like, I don't know, famous people's real estate agents, then maybe
Right.
that might be different, but
Maybe. But even
maybe.
that, you ever watch, like, my wife loves Selling Sunset, and that's just a completely different real estate. Like, I don't want that. I want nothing to do with that. I'm okay selling $150,000 starter homes to first time home buyers. That
Yeah,
feels a little bit more real and personal to me.
yeah, more
Like,
rewarding for sure.
yeah, when they talk about 1.5 million, now go to 1.3 and we'll meet in the middle and we'll go 1.4. I'm like, God, that's so much money. Like that is a lot of money at stake.
I
I
know,
don't know
I
how some
was,
people do it.
so I'm Canadian, I was looking into houses up in Vancouver, BC, where my family's from,
Yeah.
and my house here, I paid, right under 3 for it almost 10 years ago, and it's
Nice.
a pretty standard home, it's like 2,000 square feet, and I was looking at similar homes up in Vancouver, $1,000,000, million or more. It's just insane right now.
It's blown up over there,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot of people. Like in New York, we have a lot of high property taxes, which kind of really affect what people can afford.
Yeah.
And my friend Ryan, we sold his house for like 250, and he moved to Florida, which has zero Florida tax, literally zero estate tax, no real estate tax. He
Yeah.
was able to afford a house that was like 600,000. It's like what?
Wow.
Like New York just is totally asinine through some of the taxes you have to pay on your house.
Yeah.
It's totally through the roof. Do you guys have property tax out there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Washington's, isn't as bad as Oregon's,
Mhm.
but it's pretty high depending on, like, Seattle area for sure. I think ours down here in Southwest Washington is a bit more average, but yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Well, how about this? We'll finish the podcast with one more question.
Okay.
With anybody who's in law school right now, what's one piece of advice you wish you had gotten?
Drop out. No, I'm just kidding.
No.
Don't drop out. It's a lot of money. If you're in law school right now, I would say don't stress out about reading every single case that you are told to read. It's not going to happen. So don't stress out about it. Use your resources. Use Google if you have to. But there's lots of case briefs out there on different platforms. So don't try to read everything yourself. You're not going to ever achieve that.
All right, two parts to the last question.
Okay.
Second part is, what about a piece of advice of somebody who's looking to pursue law as a career?
Prepare for massive amounts of student loan debt.
Yep.
And really make sure this is what you want to do. Don't just go into it if you think you might want to do law. I don't think it would be worth it if you're not completely sure, because it is very emotionally tolling, which can lead to being physically tolling as well. So
for sure.
Do some pros and cons list and like talk to your family and support system before you actually do it.
That's good advice. Not only for law, for literally anything you have to go to school for it. It will be expensive with school loans. Please talk to a support system. Make sure you know that that's what you want to do.
And it also completely changed my outlook of like going to hardcore and metal shows, because I can't sit there and watch shows and not think of all of the liabilities that could be happening at one time, and it ruins it. And my friends make fun of me now. I'm like, oh, they shouldn't do that. What if they get sued?
Yeah.
Which is like so dumb. Like, yes, that's really dumb of me as a former hardcore kid to think about those things, and it totally ruins the experience. But like,
You're a total mom now.
I'm such a mom, like in more ways than one. And I'm like, oh, please don't get hurt, like.
So, oh my God, that guy's windmilling. No, he's gonna knock somebody unconscious. Oh.
There was that one piece about that. There was a girl that somebody was head walking with steel-toed boots on, and she ended up getting her jaw, like she had to get her jaw reconstructed. And I don't remember if it was her or her parents that sued the venue. And people were pissed about it. They were like, why would they sue the venue? And I'm like, because it's a liability. And I'm like, oh God, why am I like, old Chelsey would be so mad at me right now.
Right.
I'm like, I am so lame, but I'm like, I can see why they'd want to do that. I'm sure those medical bills are expensive.
Yeah.
And I'm like, God, 20-year-old Chelsey is screaming at me right now.
100%. I that happened to me the other day. We took my little cousin to Legoland, and we went, we're walking through, and I'm realizing my cousin hasn't like drinking much water at all today. And I go, buddy, you want a water? He's like, yeah, sure. So we stop at this concession stand. I get a Coke and a bottle of water for $15. like a tiny, not like a 2-liter, like a little tiny bottles. And I remember when the guy cashed me out, he was like $14.50 or $15, whatever. I was like, no, I just had a bottle of water and a Coke. And he's like, yeah, $15.30. And I took it, and I remember saying, I can't believe I just paid $15 for this. And then it was like my dad's voice in the back of my head was like, you should have brought your own waters.
And then all of a sudden you're like, this is highway robbery. And then you're like, get off my lawn.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where we're at. So.
With that being said, I'm gonna go sit on my front porch and go kick those kids off.
Yeah, do it.
Chelsey, thanks for doing this. I appreciate the hell out of you.
Yes, thanks so much, Cory.